They aimed at Earth. Now the Draconian Armada is gone. Then the stars blinked. Alex leaned closer. He checked his settings, rubbed his eyes, and checked again. A cluster of objects had appeared far beyond Pluto, too large to be natural and too organized to be random. They were slowing down. His heart began to race. He sent the data to a larger observatory, then another. Within minutes, replies came back, short and tense. They saw it too. By morning, the world knew. News screens filled with images and rough models, long shapes, sharp edges, massive size. They were not asteroids, they were ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Claire Monroe watched the feeds from a quiet office in Colorado. She worked in data analysis, not defense, but numbers were numbers. The patterns made her stomach tight. They are not exploring, she said to herself. They are arriving. It turned into something else, focus. Then the message came. It appeared on every screen, every device, every signal channel. The words were translated instantly, cold and clear. Earth is claimed. Surrender and submit. Resist and end. No name, no greeting, no delay. The Draconians had spoken. In Washington, John Hale stood at the back of a crowded room, watching leaders argue. He was not important enough to speak yet. That was fine. He preferred listening. They want us to kneel, one voice said. They think we are insects, said another. They have ships the size of cities, someone shouted. We can't win. He was thinking, they expect an answer fast, she said quietly. Yes, John replied. That means they expect fear. Ryan Cole climbed up beside him, hands in pockets, eyes bright. Serious enough to scrape the bottom. They didn't threaten us, she said into the camera. They assumed we would obey. On Earth, the noise grew louder, then changed shape. Arguments turned into plans. Fear turned into work. In a small lab in California, Luke Ramirez stared at lines of code. He had once designed games, systems that reacted to players, systems that punished habits. They're not players, he said to himself. They're patterns. He sent a message to a contact list that had not existed a week earlier. Engineers, programmers, hobbyists, people who liked breaking things. In Ohio, Hannah Price closed her classroom and opened a warehouse. She didn't know why she had been chosen, only that she had followed instructions calmly when others panicked. In Texas, Noah Bennett tested emergency networks, breaking them on purpose and fixing them faster each time. Across the planet, people stopped waiting for orders. John Hale finally spoke in the crowded room. His voice was calm, almost soft. They are stronger, he said, so we cannot fight them where they are strong. Silence followed. Maya stepped forward. They believe war has rules, she said. Clear lines, clean battles, strong leaders. We don't fight that way. Forgotten ones, they moved in ways that meant nothing alone. Together, they began to matter. Mining drones abandoned years ago were reactivated, not to mine, to drift. Debris fields were nudged. Signals were echoed. Silence was placed where noise should be. To an outside eye, it looked like clutter. To John Hale, it looked like a shape forming. They're watching us, Claire Monroe said from her station. They're listening to everything. In orbit, Ethan Brooks oversaw welds that would make old instructors cry. Parts did not match. Systems were layered badly on purpose. Why not clean it up? A younger engineer asked. Because clean things break cleanly, Ethan said. We want ugly. They'll never understand this mess. A sense of motion. The Draconian Armada crossed Saturn's orbit. Their formations were flawless, their confidence complete. They sent one final message. This is mercy. No one replied. Instead, 1,000 small things moved. Luke's code spread through satellites, making them react to each other instead of commands. Patterns formed and broke. Hannah's warehouse hummed with stored power. Noah's networks held under stress. Claire watched the data twist in ways no model predicted. They're about to notice, she said. Yes, John replied, and they'll think it's nothing. But fear makes us creative. Some simply watched the sky. Brooke lowered her camera for a moment and looked up. They think this is the end, she said quietly, but they don't know us. And the Draconians, for the first time, moved toward a world that did not behave the way it should. Part 2. The quiet math of survival. But behind that normal surface, something else was happening. In a low concrete building near the edge of Nevada's desert, John Hale stared at a wall filled with numbers, lines, and rough sketches. He was not a famous general. He had never commanded a fleet. He was a systems planner, the kind of man who liked puzzles more than speeches. The Draconians would never have noticed someone like him. That alone made him dangerous. John was not alone. Maya Torres leaned over a table nearby, tapping on a worn tablet. She had grease on her hands and dark circles under her eyes. She had slept maybe 3 hours in the last 2 days. She smiled anyway. "They think we are weak because we argue," she said, "because we do not speak with one voice. They do not see process." Earth's leaders had learned fast that they could not beat the Armada head-on. The Draconian ships were older than human spaceflight, larger than cities, and protected by layers of armor that laughed at standard weapons. Every simulation showed the same result. A direct fight ended with Earth burning, so they stopped trying to win battles. They started trying to cause problems. In shipyards across the world, workers were told to forget perfection. Welds did not have to look clean, parts did not have to match. If something could fly and explode in the right place, it was good enough. Ethan Brooks worked in one of those yards, standing inside the hollow shell of an old cargo ship. The ship had been retired years ago, its engines outdated, its frame patched too many times. Now it was being reborn as something strange. "This thing should not work," Ethan said, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's why it will," replied Ryan Cole, a pilot with more confidence than sense. They were turning old ships into traps. Some carried extra engines wired to overload. Others held nothing but sensors and false signals. A few were packed with dense scrap metal meant to scatter like shrapnel when torn apart. None of them followed any known military design. The Draconians loved known designs. In orbit, hundreds of small satellites were quietly changing their jobs. Once used for weather, communication, and research, they were given new code. They began to drift, slow and harmless, toward future battle space. No one would call them weapons. That was the point. Luke Ramirez helped write the new software. He had been a game developer before the war, used to thinking about tricks, rules, and player behavior. "They react like players who never expect the board to change," he said to Brooke Sanders over a video link. Brooke was recording everything. She had been a reporter once. Now she was history's witness. "Do you think they will notice?" she asked. "They will notice," Luke said, "but too late. They will try to fix it the wrong way." They complained about leaders, budgets, and plans. The Draconians listened and smiled, convinced this noise meant collapse. What they did not understand was that argument was how humans thought out loud. In a small town in Ohio, Hannah Price helped her neighbors convert a warehouse into a power storage site. She was a schoolteacher, not an engineer, but she followed instructions and asked good questions. That was enough. In California, Noah Bennett ran a group of volunteers who tested emergency networks. They broke things on purpose, then fixed them faster. Failure became practice. Everywhere, humans were learning how to move without asking permission. John Hale watched the data come together. It was not a plan in the clean sense. It was a shape, a web of small actions that only made sense when seen as a whole. "They think we will meet them at the door," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "We are going to move the walls." They sent another message, this one sharper. "Surrender now and your species may endure." Not much, just enough to adjust. That adjustment mattered. Claire Monroe leaned closer to her screen. "They are recalculating paths," she said, "but they are using old models." His cockpit shook, alarms flashing from systems never meant to work together. "Tell me again why I signed up for this," he muttered. Ethan's voice came through the channel. "Because you said sitting still was worse." Any proper military sensor would flag it as broken. The Draconians would see it as weak. That was the point. Across the planet, similar tests ran, some failed, ships were lost, people died. Their names were recorded quietly without ceremony. There was no time for that yet. Maya Torres watched a simulation fail for the 10th time and rubbed her face. "We are going to lose people," she said. John did not argue. Yes. To an outside observer, it would look like chaos. To the Draconians, chaos was unreadable. "They will try to impose order," Luke said. "That will slow them down." Senior ones dismissed them. Earth still did not fire. That silence made the Draconians uneasy. In the last days before contact, messages passed between humans in quiet tones. Families said goodbye without drama. Friends shared meals. There was fear, yes, but also a strange calm. They had done everything they could. Now it was math and motion. John Hale stood alone for a moment, watching the live map of space fill with slow-moving markers. Each one was a choice made by someone somewhere, refusing to give up. "They think survival is about being strong," he whispered. Maya joined him. "It is about being difficult." Their certainty thinned, and for the first time in their long history they began to wonder if they had misunderstood the species they had aimed at. Humanity waited not with clenched fists but with open hands full of tools, mistakes, and ideas. The trap was not ready to close yet, but it was set. The day the Draconian Armada entered Earth's inner orbit, the planet held its breath. From the surface, the ships looked like giant silver mountains moving against the stars. They cast shadows even in sunlight, massive enough to cover cities if they passed too close. People stared at the sky, unable to believe what they were seeing. In Nevada, John Hale and Maya Torres were already in the command center, surrounded by screens showing every moving object above the planet. They had spent weeks preparing, but the moment the Armada appeared, the weight of reality pressed down on them. "They're here," Maya whispered, "and they are calm, too calm." The freighter was an old ship, patched and welded in ways engineers were not proud of, but it carried what mattered, the decoy squadron. "Do we look ready?" Ryan asked, gripping the controls. Luke shook his head. "We look messy, that is the point." They had not expected humans to turn chaos into a weapon. From Earth, Brooke Sanders recorded the moment the first decoy ships launched. They flared with engines that smoked and hissed, twisting and spinning in ways no normal military craft would ever do. On purpose, they looked like desperate attempts at defense, weak and foolish. The Draconian sensors locked onto them immediately. Commanders on the bridge of their flagship, a mountain of metal and firepower, smiled. "They send only a few ships," said one officer. "We can crush them quickly." When the Draconians fired, the debris scattered like a storm, confusing sensors and forcing them to slow down. Ryan Cole flew straight into the center of the field. His ship rattled violently, alarms blaring, engines straining. "This thing is going to break," he shouted over the comms. "Good," Ethan's voice answered. "It's supposed to." Every calculation they had made was being tested in real time. "They think they control space," he said, "but space is ours to shape." They spun out from his ship, reflecting signals and sending false messages to the enemy. The Draconians began to question each other's orders. Minor disagreements escalated into confusion. Meanwhile, in orbit above Europe, Hannah Price and Noah Bennett controlled a series of older satellites that had been converted into sensors and signaling devices. They lit patterns in space, creating fake formations that suggested human reinforcements. Every time a Draconian commander tried to confirm a target, they found nothing. The flagship's commander scowled. "They are using illusions," he said, "but they are insignificant. Crush them." Luke's decoy ship led the Armada into a hidden trap, a dense field of modified drones. Each drone was small but explosive and controlled by a simple AI that made them act like wild animals. They darted toward the Draconian ships, hitting weak points, damaging sensors, and creating chaos. One of the Draconian cruisers exploded quietly, a plume of metal and fire spinning into space. It was a minor ship, but the signal spread quickly. The flagship's sensors now struggled to track every threat. Ryan grinned over the comms. "Looks like they noticed us." But every piece of chaos had a purpose. Every failure was part of the plan. On the surface, Brooke Sanders described the unfolding battle. She spoke calmly, even as she watched her city reflected in the windows behind her, knowing the skies above could bring death in minutes. "They believe Earth is weak," she said, "but that weakness is a mask. It hides a web they cannot see. They should be nothing." Each turn, each spin, each fake retreat drew more of the Armada into the trap. It was dangerous. Ships shook, alarms blared, systems failed. Any mistake could destroy them, but the Draconians made more mistakes. They were not used to enemies that could think unpredictably, act without strict order, and turn their own rules against them. Hannah Price monitored signals from Earth. "They are panicking," she said. "Even the command ship is showing irregular responses." Maya Torres allowed herself a small smile. "It is working." "Two down," Ryan said, "and no one even touched our main fleet." Every small advantage, every clever trick, every unpredictable move brought them closer to survival. The flagship's commander now realized the scope of the problem. His clean lines of command had failed. The humans had turned disorder into a weapon. His fleet was crumbling, not from strength, but from unpredictability, and that was human nature. As the sun rose over Earth, reflecting off the remaining enemy ships, John Hale and Maya Torres looked at the screen. Hundreds of tiny markers showed broken formations, confused signals, and disabled ships. "They believed they could scare us," John said, "but fear is not our weakness, it is our teacher. They will not recover from this." Metal bent, fires burned, and the massive cruiser that had led the Armada shuddered. Alarms blared across the remaining ships. "They are collapsing," Luke said quietly. Brooke Sanders' voice was calm but full of awe. For the first time in history, humanity has forced the Draconian Armada to retreat. They aimed at Earth thinking we would kneel. Instead, they are losing control of themselves. And the Draconians, for all their power, for all their history, had no answer. The trap had worked. The first real battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won not by sheer force, but by refusing to play the game their enemy expected. And the teeth behind the smile of Earth had just begun to show. The Draconian Armada had never seen anything like this. Ships that were supposed to obey orders now drifted randomly. Cruisers that were supposed to crush resistance were caught in their own traps. Commanders argued and gave conflicting instructions. For the first time in their long history, the Draconians faced a species they could not predict. On Earth, people watched the sky with a mixture of fear and awe. Brooke Sanders reported live from a hill outside New York. She held her camera steady, showing the faint glows and flashes of explosions above the clouds. "They aimed at us thinking we would fall," she said. "But humans do not break that easily. They miscalculated." The main fleet was safe, but their job was not over. Each decoy ship carried a signal package designed to confuse the Draconians even after the battle. "Do you think they will retreat?" Ryan asked, gripping the controls as the ship shuddered from nearby explosions. "They have no choice," Luke said. "Their command is gone. Their fleet is broken. Retreat is all they can do. And they will remember this day for the rest of their history." In Ohio, Hannah Price and Noah Bennett watched a small ship explode near the outer rim of the fleet. "It's over," Hannah said quietly, still gripping the control panel of the converted satellite network. "No," Noah replied. "It's only the beginning." They had done it because of ingenuity, courage, and refusal to follow expected rules. Earth had shown the galaxy that humans were dangerous not for their strength, but for their ability to think differently. On Luke's decoy ship, a small alarm rang. It was the last package of signals reaching the enemy. It created illusions of fleets that did not exist, sending the Draconians on wild chases as they tried to reorganize. "Looks like we are finishing them off without even touching the main fleet," Ryan said, a tired smile on his face. Luke chuckled. "Sometimes the mind is the strongest weapon." Every movement in space was designed to slow the Draconians just enough to keep them from regrouping. Every delay, every misstep, added to their confusion. "They will not be able to come back the same way," John said. "They will fear Earth forever." People poured into streets, waving, cheering, and embracing. The battle had been invisible to many, fought silently in orbit and in code, but its victory was tangible. Brooke Sanders smiled at the camera. "Earth stands today because we refused to be simple. We refused to be predictable. They aimed at us, thinking we were weak. Now their armada is gone, and our world remains." John Hale and Maya Torres, exhausted and covered in dust from hours of coordination, looked at each other and allowed themselves a small laugh. "We actually did it," Maya said. "Yeah," John replied, "and no one believed we could." Adaptation, courage, and the will to act unpredictably were far more dangerous than any weapon. Across the galaxy, other civilizations took note. Messages were intercepted by alien species who had watched Earth for centuries, thinking it a small, unimportant world. Now they saw humans differently. They saw a species that refused to be simple, a species that could turn fear into a weapon. A species that could survive when all odds seemed against it. In orbit, Luke Ramirez looked out at the stars. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We sent a message." But there was a quiet pride that could not be measured. Humanity had faced the greatest force it had ever known and had not bowed. Hannah Price and Noah Bennett walked through a rebuilt lab, watching the young engineers and volunteers check systems and satellites. "They will never underestimate us again," Hannah said. "No," Noah replied. "And that is the point. Now the Draconian Armada is gone, and humanity stands taller than ever before." Every tale added to the legend of the day Earth had survived. John Hale and Maya Torres finally allowed themselves a moment of rest. They sat together in the quiet command center, looking at a map of the empty sky where the Draconians had been. "They will come back someday," John said, "but they will never be ready for us again. Not with fear, not with anger, but with thought, with everything they cannot see coming." The Draconian Armada would remember the planet they had underestimated. Every historian, every survivor, every story would carry the same lesson. Humans are dangerous because they refuse to be predictable, because they do not bend easily, because when the universe thinks they are weak, they become something far stronger than anyone imagined. Across the planet, life went on. Children laughed. Cities thrived. Scientists worked on new technology. Pilots trained in quiet simulators. People lived, but now with a quiet certainty that they were not just another species. Earth had survived, and humanity had shown its teeth. The Draconian Armada was gone, but its shadow lingered in memory, a reminder that some things in the universe cannot be broken, tamed, or predicted. And Earth was one of them. Humanity would never forget. Humanity would never be underestimated again.